has been very resistant to declaring an all-out war against drugs, because she understands that these particular cartels hold a lot of power, have a lot of people in their pocket, and it would be very difficult for her to declare war and then face it off on with them on this with her police and their cartel men. So she's not declaring an all-out war, though she's trying to weed the particular menace out of Mexico. So while she's doing exactly what these protesters wanted, the grief that they have felt for the death of a person has probably been manipulated into in this particular violent manifestation. Sheinbaum herself believes that there is a particular foreign agenda in trying to influence these people, keep them funded and on the streets while they try and tear down Mexico. And that is unfortunately what we've seen with all Gen Z protests. They start with a particular cause, with a particular agenda, very valid, very on grassroots level, very, very effective, but slowly and slowly there are organizations that try and take over that cause and turn it into their own regime change operation, and unfortunately USA is guilty of that in more than one ways. So I do not know exactly how far is this problem going, because Sheinbaum and Trump don't see eye to eye, though she bows, if not completely, to what the USA decides it wants from Mexico, but she doesn't bend the knee and become a vassal state. So they're not very happy with her. She has been very vocal about how the sanctions keep fluctuating against Mexico, and Trump has kind of not given her the right indications of being a partner in their task against drug and its menace. So I do believe that it might be more than just the youth on the streets and their grief being formalized in this kind of a riot. I think there might be something deeper and more sinister at play.
Right, and building on that, how do you think, or why do you think Claudia Sheinbaum is hesitant to call out a full rage war on drug cartels? Although you did mention rightfully that she did do a lot so far, and how is her addressing the growing perception that her government is failing to curb rising violence, especially in the wake of this such high-profile killings like of Mayor Carlos? How do you think, how might this her response to Generation Z affect public perception of her legitimacy or her administration now?
I think in this particular case, she could have taken a feather out of the Trump regime's reaction to Charlie Kirk's incident, because he was also a person who was very popular and had a particular fan base. So had they done the same for the Carlos killing, had they tried to showcase him as a hero and would have had a few heads roll in regarding to that, she would have had the love of the very same people that are rioting on the street. So her administration probably did not respond correctly and did not tap into the emotions of the people that are there right now on the streets. Her decision not to declare an all-out war has more layers. Mexico has drug cartels run Mexico in many ways. They are a parallel governance system, which she's trying to crack down on without actually declaring war, because it puts the security personnel themselves into a very dangerous situation, and it might also kind of fuel these cartels into fueling these kind of protests. So she doesn't want an all-out war in a declaration with the flag waving and guns pointed, because a lot of the youth are employed by these people. So I think she wants to kind of change out the problem that has led to this kind of proliferation of drug cartels and their illegal activities, rather than take on the cartel head on. Though her approach is appreciable, it is counterproductive, and she's not able to tap into the people's emotions, not able to tap into the environments around the world and see how a small fire can lead to this kind of a large inferno, and which is what is kind of inflaming now the streets of Mexico. And she needs to have a rethink on how she can play out the future days, rather than blaming the Gen Z, putting them in jails. I think If she takes out a feather from Bangladesh, it would be better. And Nepal, it would be better to empower these people and say and help them find a way to deal with the loss of a leader that they happen to love.
Yes, indeed. A very good point about, yes, they could have done something that Charlie Kirk or U.S. administration did with Charlie Kirk. Indeed, very nice hearing from you. Always great learning from you. Thank you very much, Shruti Dasgupta, for sharing that insight. Now we move on to our next news. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has condemned upcoming military exercises by Trinidad and Tobago, set to take place off the coast of Venezuela's Sucre state from November 17th to 20th. Speaking at a rally, Maduro has accused the neighboring nation of allowing its waters to be used for military drills. Let's listen in.
El gobierno de Trinidad y Tobago ha anunciado nuevamente unos ejercicios irresponsables prestando sus aguas frente a la costa del estado Sucre para ejercicios militares que pretenden que sean amenazantes para una república como Venezuela que no se deja amenazar por nadie. Ellos dicen que lo van a hacer de lunes a jueves. Bueno, el pueblo de Trinidad y Tobago verá si sigue soportando que utilicen sus aguas y su tierra para amenazar gravemente la paz del Caribe.
These drills come amid heightened U.S. military operations in the region, which the U.S. claims are targeting drug trafficking, but Maduro insists are part of an effort to undermine his government. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Matthew Vadam. He's an American journalist, joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Matthew, for staying with us. Now looking at this, how are Trinidad and Tobago framing their military exercises? Is this a direct support to U.S. and what diplomatic responses could emerge from Maduro's accusation towards U.S.? Matthew, would you, if possible, please unmute yourself over here? Yeah. Oh.
Okay, there we are.
Yes,
are we?
thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. The question was, what is Trinidad doing and why is it doing it, basically? I think is what you asked me.
Yes.
And Trinidad wants better relations, wants to have good relations with the United States, and Trinidad is concerned about Venezuela. Venezuela, you know, is an unstable country headed by a dictator, Nicolas Maduro, who is not. He's not a good guy to have as your neighbor. And Trinidad is only a few miles located a few miles off the coast of Venezuela, down in South America, and Trinidad and Tobago, the government there wants to have a closer relationship with the United States government. So it's not surprising that they've agreed to the exercises taking place in the waters off of Trinidad. These exercises Maduro views as a threat, and I can see why he sees it that way, especially considering all the saber rattling that President Donald Trump has been engaged in against Venezuela. Venezuela is, a brutal dictatorship, and it's not a friend of the United States. And the United States has been, has been openly hostile to the Maduro regime, as it was to that of the previous dictator, Hugo Chavez. So I can see why Maduro would view these exercises in Trinidad, with the joint military exercises with the United States, as a threat. But I think Maduro's reaction is pretty over the top and exaggerated. He keeps claiming that the United States is going to invade Venezuela, and that Venezuelans are going to have to fight them in the streets. And just the other day, Maduro said something to the effect of they're going to use guerrilla warfare techniques against the United States if it comes to that. And I don't think President Trump plans to invade Venezuela, but he's not happy with Venezuela's policies, and I think he's trying to send them a message that they need to change their ways, especially, and look at what the United States has been doing, killing, destroying boats of South American alleged drug runners without authorization from the United States Congress. That's made some people in the U.S. Congress upset. But President Trump has been using the U.S. military against South American, what he identifies as South American narcotics traffickers in order to save Americans, because he's fearful that fentanyl and other things like that kill a lot of Americans every year are being smuggled into the United States, and he's hoping to end that. Whether his policies are going to accomplish that is a matter of some controversy here in the United States. A lot of people support President Trump's efforts against narco-terrorism, but there's a significant segment of the population that's not convinced that it's necessary. So,
Yes.
Trinidad agreeing to these military exercises with the United States is a way for it to improve its standing, its relationship, diplomatically and otherwise, with the United States. And Maduro views any effort by another Caribbean nation to be drawn closer into the orbit of the United States as a threat, and that's why Maduro is upset.
Yes, with that, I would like to thank Matthew Adam for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to U.S. Heavy rain is expected across Southern California and parts of the Southwest, including Los Angeles, United States, as a storm strengthens this weekend. Meteorologists have warned that the torrential rain could cause flash flooding, mudslides, and washed out roads, making traveling difficult or dangerous. The heavy rains will target the southern half of California and spread inland over the deserts of Nevada, southeastern. Hello and welcome. I'm Suma Katauka and you're watching World Report on News X World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. The UK Labour government says it will end automatic benefits for asylum seekers as part of a push to cut irregular migration. The Interior Ministry says the overhaul will follow Denmark's strict immigration model. China says its Coast Guard has patrolled waters around the Japan-controlled Senkaku Islands amid soaring tensions over Tokyo's Taiwan comments. Beijing insists the islands are its territory as tensions between Tokyo and Beijing's rise. President Zelensky says Ukraine is working to resume prisoner exchanges with Russia, seeking the return of about 1,200 Ukrainians. Security Chief Rustem Umerov says talks have been held in Turkey and the UAE with support from allies. Israel has launched new strikes east of Khan Yunis and in Gaza City's Zaytun area. Even inside the so-called Yellow Line, Gaza health officials say Israel has now returned 330 bodies since the ceasefire as families face worsening conditions and winter hardships. Israel's High Court will decide today who oversees the SDE Taimon leak investigation after the bitter power struggle between Justice Minister Yariv Levin and Attorney General Gali Baharav Miara. Judges may appoint a retired Supreme Court justice as both sides refuse to compromise. At least 120 people, mostly police, were injured as thousands President Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico City. Clashes erupted when hooded youths threw projectiles, prompting police to respond. Authorities say 20 people were arrested. Lebanese Parliament Speaker Nabi Berri says Hezbollah has the right to rebuild itself and has not fired a shot since last year's ceasefire. He accuses Israel of violating the deal while denying any weapons smuggling into Lebanon. A public feud has erupted between President Trump and Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene after he branded her wacky and a traitor. Greene has questioned whether Trump still puts America first as the House prepares to vote on releasing the Epstein files. Now we start with Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine is actively working to restart its prisoner exchange program with Russia, targeting the release of around 1,200 Ukrainian captives. President Volodymyr Zelensky, speaking on Telegram, said the government is devoting many meetings, calls and negotiations to this effort. His Security Council chief Rustam Umerov has confirmed that consultations were held in Turkey and the United Arab Emirates with the support of international partners to revive the process under the Istanbul Agreements of 2022. These agreements set the framework for large coordinated swaps, though past exchanges have often been disrupted by frontline escalation. Umerov has added that discussions on procedural and organizational details are ongoing, with the aim of allowing Ukrainians in captivity to celebrate New Year and Christmas with their families. Moscow has not yet commented on Kyiv's announcement. Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Georgy Toloraya. He's a professor of Russia Academy of Science, Moscow. Joins us live from Moscow. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Professor, now looking at this, how does Russia assesses the feasibility of restarting the prisoner exchange?
You know, that's a little bit strange for me because this is quite a regular procedure. I don't see any much of a news in it actually, and I don't understand why Zelensky would announce, which is a regular practice. It's been stopped for some time because the Ukrainians were sometimes not ready to perform exchanges, but as far as I know, Russia is always ready to do this, and this has been our position. And I haven't heard any comments from Moscow or announcements, so we have to look what's behind it. Of course, it's a normal practice. It's a good thing, and I don't see why it should be propagated as a sort of a peaceful initiative by Ukraine. It's a normal practice, not much of a deal. But it's a good thing if any kind of Istanbul process, any kind of negotiation would resume, because, as I've said many times, the only way to end the war are negotiations and some kind of a peace deal, which is to be agreed on between Russia and Ukraine. And Ukraine, so far, they don't want to negotiate. If they change their mind on this particular topic, if it's the first step towards a broader negotiation, that's good. If it's some kind of a propaganda efforts, so we have to look.
Right. Talking about propaganda effort, do you think that Zelensky decided to make this POW exchange sound big to keep up the morale of his soldiers?
As far as I know, there's a lot of desertions, and there's lots of Ukrainian soldiers surrendering to Russian troops, and Ukraine was to prevent it. So maybe that's some kind of a propaganda aimed at its own troops. I don't know. So far, not enough information about this particular initiative.
And what role does the involvement of international partners like Turkey and UAE play in influencing or pressuring these exchange negotiations?
Well, as I said, there's no need to pressure Russia, and I understand that both the neutral partners, such as Turkey, they just provide the venue for the meetings, and I do not know if they should interfere too deeply, because this is a deal which can be done by both sides, by warring parties.
Right.
As I said, this is not something new, not something that is not known before, and it has been stopped, which is a pity, but it's not a big change.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor Georgi Toleraya, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we stay on this region. Now, President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced Ukraine will receive gas imports from Greece this winter. He has said that Kyiv has prepared an agreement with Greece to create an additional gas supply route, strengthening Ukraine's energy security as Russia intensifies strikes on power and gas infrastructures. Zelensky has stated that Ukraine has already secured financing for nearly 2 billion euros to cover gas imports and compensate for domestic production losses caused by Russian attacks. Funding will come from European partners and banks, backed by European Commission guarantees, as well as Ukrainian banks, with additional support being coordinated with the United States. He has also noted that Ukraine is expanding its winter supply options through Polish partners, working with Azerbaijan, and aiming to secure long-term contracts to stabilize energy supplies. This is what he has said.
Вже на сьогодні підготували домовленість з Грецією по газу для України. Це буде ще один напрямок постачання газу, щоб убезпечити максимально на зиму маршрути імпорту газу для України. Вже є у нас домовленості про фінансування імпорту газу, і ми закриємо потребу майже 2 мільярди євро на імпорт газу, щоб компенсувати втрати українського видобутку через Росію.
Now, for this discussion, we welcome back Professor Georgi Toleraya. He's a professor of Russia Academy of Science, joins us live from Moscow. Thank you very much, Professor, for staying with us. Professor, looking at this, how does Russia assess the role of European-backed financing in enabling Ukraine to mitigate the attacks of Russia for energy production?
Yeah, it's true that Russia started finally on its fourth year in war. It's started to attack the energy infrastructure, which I think should have been earlier. But we have taken out nearly 60% of the gas production in Ukraine. And Ukraine has stopped Russian transit gas from which we used to get the gas before. So it's funny that as a result they have to buy actually the same Russian gas from Europe. It goes first to Bulgaria or Romania, whatever, or for Turkey, and then through a lot of intermediaries, a lot of schemes involving many companies, some foreign companies, some serious companies. But when it finally gets to Ukraine, it's several times more dear than the original price, and this profit goes to these European intermediaries probably. So that's a good deal from Europe, and it's a good deal for Ukraine, because they don't pay with their own money. They pay by European money, which they squeeze out of Europe or out of EC. So it means that, in fact, the EC is paying to the European companies through Ukraine, and some of it goes into corrupt channels of Ukrainian government, of course. So this is, I think it's a deal which is profitable to all involved, but not so good for the population, because they have to pay much more for the gas and for the energy. As for Greece, this I know that Zelensky has rushed to Greece, where he wants to find some support in anti-aircraft equipment and other weapons, and among this is also this deal with the gas. So it probably, Greece doesn't produce that much gas, and so it would actually be just Greek gas, just a name, because it will go first to Bulgaria and then to Ukraine, and that will be eventually that will partly, at least for a big part, Russian gas. So that's how the modern global, so-called global economy works.
Also, Professor, are you saying that Ukraine is buying Russian gas from indirectly from Greece.
In fact, the main source is still Russia, which goes to the southern Europe through different channels, for Turkey, for other channels, and then part of it goes to Ukraine. There's no label on it. There's no, price tag that it's from Russia, but eventually Russia still remains the biggest gas producer in this area.
And do you think that Ukrainian people or people in Europe know about this supply chain?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure this is much researched or much publicized in Europe. But, well, actually, if you come to think of it, then you have to find out where it comes from. Partly the gas to Europe from as a liquefied gas from the US and other markets, but if you speak about natural gas, that's usually Russian gas.
How do you think this?
Or sometimes from Central Asia and Azerbaijan, but that's a smaller part.
Yes. So how do you think this, indirectly coming from these gas that's indirectly coming from Russia, but through Greece, Poland, Azerbaijan, alter Ukraine's regional energy dynamics or shift regional energy dynamics?
Of course, it shifts the range of dynamics, but as I said, I haven't made any special research on this, so I cannot state it as a scholar, as a researcher. But from as far as I know, as far as I understand, this kind of commerce, it mostly brings profit to certain European elites who are involved in this business.
Yeah, thank you.
And of course to Ukrainian officials who are well known for their corruption.
Can you tell us more about the corruption that, even the scandal that's ongoing? Do you think this is all connected with this newly announced deal with Greece?
I don't think it is connected, and the corruption in Ukraine is a well-known fact, and it's been going on for years. This new particular case, I don't know why it got publicized. There's some kind of internal struggle inside the Ukrainian elite, and maybe also with the support of the West, in order to change dynamic in the power elite. So it should be taken as a sign of this political process, rather than something unexpected that couldn't have been unearthed earlier. I don't think it's connected in any way to this gas deal, but I think that knowing how the Ukrainian state and officials, how they work, how corrupt they are, I'm sure that also will be some kind of corruption involved in the final run when if the deal goes through.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor, for connecting all this and sharing that insight on this topic. Thank you very much, Professor Georgi Toleraya. Now we move on to Middle East. According to local Israeli media, the Trump administration is reportedly considering dropping its requirement that Hamas be disarmed before Gaza reconstruction begins, due to difficulties securing commitments from foreign governments willing to join a stabilization force. This potential shift has led to a deadlock with Israel, which insists that Gaza must be demilitarized before any rebuilding can occur, in line with Trump's original 20-point plan. The U.S. is set to push a UN Security Council vote on Monday on a resolution authorizing a temporary international stabilization force in Gaza through 2027. Countries willing to contribute troops have demanded such a UN mandate. Anticipating passage, Israel has begun preparing for the arrival of thousands of foreign soldiers. However, most potential ISF participants say they are unwilling to enforce Hamas disarmament, agreeing only to serve as peacekeepers. Israeli officials warn that delaying demilitarization is dangerous, saying Hamas has been regaining strength since the ceasefire took effect early October. Now for this discussion, we welcome Ali Mohammed Abushbak. He is a Middle East researcher, joins us live from Cairo. Thank you very much, Ali, for joining us again. Good to see you. Ali, what more can you tell us about what is happening with ISF and upcoming phase 2 and the demilitarization of Hamas as well? And can you tell us how popular is Hamas among Palestinians in Gaza right now?
Thank you, Soma, for
Thank
having
you.
me. The situation on the ground, in fact, there is a several of a change. And last week, that Washington Post revealed that there is a talk between American administration as well as Hamas, and there is a meeting that it's going to be organized between Hamas and Witkoff. So this transformation between the relation between Hamas and America, and that could be referred to that is going Hamas to tight a relation with America, and this talk between America and Hamas that's giving Hamas authorization in Gaza and as a authentic representative for Palestinian people. There is a several of change. Maybe we will witness like what happened with Ahmad al-Shara in Syria after he was a terrorist and he was in a black in America as a black name and as also a terrorist. Now he become a peace person, and he's going to be handled with Israel and with America and supported by supported by Donald Trump. I guess this kind of talk, and I guess what is happening now, the White House going to accept Hamas on the ground, maybe that we will see it again. And especially we are talking about there is still disagreement between America and Israel and the peace forces or stabilization forces in Gaza. Up to now it's not solved. Tomorrow is going the United Security Council is going to vote on this kind of force and duty of this force, what is will be. And up to now, most of the country they want approval and they want guarantee from the United Security Council to start work in Gaza. Most of the country participating in this and involved in these forces are accepting to be as a peacekeeping forces, not to disarm Hamas. I guess also it's a realistic idea. After Donald Trump, he considered this is idealistic idea to disarm Hamas. We have a typical example, Hezbollah. We are going to 1 year after the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. One of the significant terms to disarm Hezbollah from it's a weapon, and we have seen up to now it's not solved the issue. And that will complicate the situation. That's it. Donald Trump, he go through that temporary solution that accepting Hamas and the reconstruction Gaza, and then after that they are going to negotiate about the disarm Hamas. Especially we are talking about the second phase of negotiation and a plan. It's still deadlock, and there is no negotiation about it. And up to now, the first phase is not completely applied, and the implement of it is still late. Especially we are talking about Israel still locked the border between Gaza and Egypt, and still Israel controlled the humanitarian aids which want to enter Gaza. Up to now, there is a lack in food in Gaza. So that's make it a situation more incredible, and I guess Donald Trump now become in this reality that a significant point should be reconstruction in Gaza, and then after that we will talk about who's governor in Gaza and who's will be representing Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu, he considered these things as a red line about Hamas weapon and about the power of Hamas. He said Hamas should be erased to promote and to stimulate his victory in the war. Otherwise, he did nothing. He just only destroyed Gaza. Hamas is still exists. Hamas is still has a power, but he waged a war without any goal, without any outcome. That's it. Benjamin
Yes.
Netanyahu is rejecting and declined such kind of notion and idea. Should be Hamas disarmed on the ground. I guess Hamas is not going to accept it.
And Ali, as you also rightfully mentioned that, leaders have started to realistically rethink about demilitarizing Hamas because is it because there's no other power over there or no other organization that can legitimately govern Gaza right now towards lasting peace? And also, do you think demilitarization of Hamas is feasible?
I guess this is not a logical thing. I said we have a typical example about Hezbollah. Up to now, it's not going to disarm. And if you will look at the history, there is no any kind of a militant revolution disarmed and withdraw from the atmosphere or from the landscape like this. So about ruling Gaza, that talk about the Palestinian Authority, this is also not realistic. Especially we are talking about the socio-political fragmentation between Gaza and Israel and West Bank, as well as since 2007 up to now, the Palestinian Authority is not empowered in Gaza. Similar things also in West Bank. Still, at the Benjamin Netanyahu regime and his government, they are trying to weakness the Palestinian Authority in West Bank without any kind of empowerment there. And that's make it a more incredible. And we have witnessed several of action and accident happened in West Bank. One of the significant things during the peace process, who was negotiating about the future of Gaza? It was Hamas, not the Palestinian Authority. So that's make it more complicated the situation. Palestinian Authority has no any representation, no any any exist in the frame or any exist in the landscape. As a de facto situation, Hamas only ruling Gaza, and Hamas has the only power in Gaza. What is happening that about the stabilization forces? I guess just only it will monitor the peace process, and they will be monitor who is going to violated the ceasefire. It's not going to disarm Hamas. Especially we are talking about maybe Egypt and several of Arab countries. They are going to participate in these forces, and if they are going to disarm Hamas, it will make a crisis for them in their countries. The public opinion in Arab area, they are supporting the Palestinian resistance and the Palestinian struggle against Israel. And according to international law, the Palestinians, any country resist the occupation has a right to resist it, or any country under the occupation has a right to resist the occupation and end the occupation, except in the Palestinian case it's prohibited for that because of the double standard. So the thing is here more complicated, I guess. Also we have seen the statement of Indonesia and Turkey and the several of countries. They are not going to participate and indulge involved in such kind of process. Also.
Yes, thank you, Ali, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic now. Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, has stated on a recent social media post that Israel will not allow a Palestinian state to emerge. He has also said the IDF will maintain positions on Mount Hermon and within the security zone. Katz has added that Gaza will be fully de-Hamased, targeting tunnels and disarming Hamas. He has also said that Hamas will be disarmed in the yellow zone by the IDF and in old Gaza by either an international force or the IDF. Now we go back to welcoming Ali Mohammed Abushbak. He's a Middle East researcher, joins us live from Cairo. Thank you very much, Ali, for staying with us. Now, as we were just talking and discussing how unrealistic it is for all the parties involved, and you mentioned that Netanyahu is pushing this because in the end he declared to finish Hamas and then he has not done it. How might Israel's explicit rejection of future Palestinian state, how do you think this is affecting regional diplomacy, also the international efforts to a long-term political solution there? And what political implications arise from IDF maintaining control over Mount Hermon and some security zones, or a lot of zones in Gaza?
So also, it's worth mentioning that Israel is acting like a cunning on the ground. We have seen the scandal about 120 Palestinian deported from Gaza to South Africa, how that's Israel facilitated, and there is a still the investigation is still ongoing, but most of the accusation it's toward Israel that facilitated the deport of 120 civilians from Gaza to landed in South Africa illegally. So that's showing the cure goal for Israel to facilitate the deport of civilians from Gaza and expelled Gaza from the civilians and reoccupied Gaza, what Smotrich and Benefir's plan to reoccupy Gaza and restructured the settlement in Gaza Strip. And kick the Palestinian out Gaza. So this is the significant aim for the Israeli settler and some Israelis ministry in this right-wing government and far right-wing government. So the thing says here, it's still the conflict is still exists on the ground, but now it's in soft power rather than the hard power or harsh power like a weapon. In my opinion, Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to manipulate the Israeli the local audience and the community for the coming elections. Especially, we are talking next week. Next year there is a parliament election. Otherwise, Benjamin Netanyahu will be in the jail because of the corruption trail against him. As well as Benjamin Netanyahu, he's called by the International Criminal Court. So that's it. He's trying to take such kind of war for his benefit. And the Israeli minister, he's talking about erase Hamas. I guess it's not realistic because we have seen after killing also in Ansarullah al-Houthi in Yemen and Iran, one of the significant aims for the war in Iran, it was not only the nuclear weapon, it was also to change the regime. Up to now failed. It's not realistic on the ground. Even in Americans' war in Afghanistan before, it was to finish Taliban's rule in Afghanistan. But now Afghanistan ruling by Taliban, and there is an agreement 100%. Between Taliban and also.
With that, I would like to thank Ali Muhammad Bushbak for joining us and sharing that insight as a Middle East researcher from Cairo. Thank you very much, Ali. Now we move on to Mexico. Thousands of people across Mexico have taken to the streets under the banner of Generation Z to protest rising violence after the public killing of an anti-crime mayor earlier this month. In Mexico City, demonstrators tore down fences around the National Palace, where President Claudia Sheinbaum lives, triggering clashes with riot police who responded with tear gas. Authorities say 100 police officers and 20 civilians were injured in the confrontation. Protests have also spread to cities nationwide, including Michoacan, where anger has grown over the murder of Uruapan Mayor Carlos Manzo, who was shot dead during a public Day of the Dead event. Itself, Generation Z in Mexico, organized the demonstrations, claiming in a circulating manifesto that it is non-partisan and represents young people tired of violence, corruption, and abuse of power. Let's in fact listen into what some protesters have shared.
Salimos a marchar porque exigimos justicia y porque los jóvenes estamos hartos y queremos un futuro bien para nuestros hijos y para las próximas generaciones. Tal vez la generación pasada no lo hizo de la mejor manera, pero estamos listos y creo que es el momento de nosotros también.
Creo que los jóvenes somos el futuro de la política y pues por lo que hemos estado pasando en estos días y en esta semana hemos sido censurados por el mismo gobierno en estas marchas, entonces pues nosotros tenemos esperanza de que como jóvenes en algún momento nosotros lleguemos al cargo político y podamos cambiar esto desde adentro y desde afuera. Por lo menos vamos a seguir luchando en las calles y en el territorio que es donde es la oficina.
That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
In the midst of this, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists.
Hello and welcome. I'm Suma Katauka and you're watching World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Russia's air defenses have intercepted at least 57 Ukrainian drones overnight across Samara, Volgograd, Saratov and Rostov regions. In Volgograd, drones struck residential buildings, injuring 3, sparking a fire and prompting temporary shelters for displaced residents. Britain plans its toughest asylum policy overhaul inspired by Denmark. The Labour government will cut housing and weekly allowances for certain asylum seekers, targeting those who can work but do not or who break the law, prioritizing support for contributors to society. Activists in Charlotte protested federal immigration raids targeting residents without criminal records. Hundreds also demonstrated outside the White House against President Donald Trump, marching peacefully and wrapping crime scene tape around the perimeter, with more protests planned this month. Thousands of Mexicans have staged Generation Z protests after the public murder of an anti-crime mayor, with demonstrations in Mexico City as local public safety secretary Pablo Vazquez said 100 police were injured, 40 hospitalized along with 20 civilians, while authorities made 20 arrests and issued 20 administrative sanctions. U.S. President Donald Trump purchased at least $82 million in corporate and municipal bonds from late August to early October, including companies benefiting from his policies, according to financial disclosure released. China has sent a Coast Guard ship formation through the Japan-administered Senkaku Islands on the rights enforcement patrol, escalating tensions after Japan's newly elected prime minister stated her public defense posture on Taiwan. The move marks a sharp intensification of the diplomatic clash between the two nations. At least 6 people were killed and dozens injured when an illegal fireworks factory exploded in Hyderabad Division, Sindh, Pakistan. The blast sparked a major fire and building collapsed. Rescue teams fear more victims are trapped inside, and authorities have launched a full safety investigation. Thailand says trade talks with the US will continue despite a border clash with Cambodia that has killed 1 civilian, with government spokesperson Siripong Angkasakul-Kiat quoting that President Donald Trump as supporting separation of tariff negotiations from regional tensions. This follows recent violence and a peace pact signed in Kuala Lumpur. Now we start with this hour with Russia and Ukraine. at least 57 Ukrainian drones have been intercepted and destroyed by Russia's air defenses overnight. The attacks were reported across multiple Russian regions, including Samara, Volgograd, Saratov, and Rostov. A significant number of the drones were downed in the Samara region, where 23 unmanned aerial vehicles were targeted. Meanwhile, in Volgograd, Ukrainian drones have attacked residential buildings, including 3 people. Authorities report that the victims are receiving medical attention and their injuries are not life-threatening. Fire also broke out at an apartment building following the assault. The local administration has opened temporary shelters for displaced residents, while bomb squads continue to assess the damage. Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Veselin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Professor, now looking at this, it seems like Ukraine has changed or upgraded their military strategy, attacking several regions in a night, not just one. What are the strategic implications of now Ukraine targeting multiple Russian regions now?
Yes. By the way, several days ago, Ukraine destroyed one of the biggest oil exporting port in the Black Sea, Novorossiysk. And that is a very, very significant news because this is where Russia gets all its money to continue the war and continue to kill civilians and commit war crimes in Ukraine. So that was pretty much significant, the hit on Novorossiysk. The latest news, yes, Volgograd is another area which has many military objects. It has airports from where Russian airplanes fly and also shoot missiles and drones into the Ukrainian territory. Well, basically everything in Russia which has some military significance represent a target for Ukrainian drones. There is absolutely no doubt about that. There is absolutely no surprise about that. Such attacks will continue and Russia should be prepared for this. Until the aggressor withdraws its troops from Ukraine and goes home, there will be such attack. Ukrainians have no other choice but to hit military targets all over Russia. And they will continue to be supplied with those missiles that hit to a longer range into the Russian territory. So basically no Russian city anymore will be safe if the policy of Vladimir Putin continues and if he continues to kill civilians in Ukraine and doesn't withdraw from the illegally occupied regions in Ukraine. So that's the message here. It doesn't matter how many drones the Russians can gun down. There will always be some drones and some missiles that will penetrate the Russian air defense system and hit the military targets in Russia. So that's the equation here. Nobody in Russia should be safe until Vladimir Putin changed the course, accept ceasefire, proposed 7-8 times already. Donald Trump is absolutely pissed off with Russia because he proposed so many times ceasefire, 30 days, limited, unlimited, and every of those attempts to achieve ceasefire basically collapsed. The diplomacy collapsed. There are no talks anymore between Washington and Moscow. There is an exchange of threats between the two. And that escalation and that lack of diplomacy effectively means that the war continues entirely. The guilty part is very clear here. It is the Moscow regime by Vladimir Putin. Those hits will continue.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor Popovsky, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to UK, Britain has said that it would launch the largest overhaul of policy on asylum seekers, drawing inspiration from Denmark's approach, which is one of the toughest in Europe. The Labour government has been hardening its immigration policies, particularly on illegal small boat crossings from France. This comes as the government seeks to stem the surging popularity of the populist Reform UK party, which has driven the immigration agenda and forced Labour to adopt a tougher line. As part of the changes, the statutory duty to provide support to certain asylum seekers, including housing and weekly allowances, will be revoked. The government has stated that the measures would apply to asylum seekers who can work but choose not to, and to those who break the law. It has said that taxpayer-funded support would be prioritized for those contributing to the economy and local communities. Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Veselin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean of Jindal Global Law School, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Professor, for staying with us. Now looking at this, how is the UK government's adoption of Denmark-style asylum policies? How do you think this would affect the rights and protection of asylum seekers, and what are the potential social and economic impacts that could result from this statutory support?
Yes, I will say this is unfortunate news that the Labour Party is following basically not only the Denmark-style tough measures on asylum seekers, but also on the Reform UK, very nationalistic and populist policy agenda. And so how to balance the popularity of the Reform UK, the Labour Party decides to move that direction in order to get some more votes in future elections, because they are losing. All the opinion polls show that Reform UK is most popular in opinion polls. We will see when the elections come, but that's a very unfortunate development. And yes, the Interior Minister was very clear that tough measures will be imposed only on those asylum seekers that refuse to work and those that commit some crime, even minor crimes. So there will be a kind of an individual approach to each asylum seeker. So not all of them will be affected, but only those who are not working and those who basically are burdened for the taxpayers. But on the opposite, asylum seekers who do contribute to the British economy and pay their taxes and are compliant and peaceful citizens, there shouldn't be any problem with those. But yes, we see all over Europe, some increasing nationalistic and xenophobic statements. That language of Nationalist Party is a matter of concern. And because Britain used to be seen as the most friendly country and policy towards asylum seekers, there have been a lot of illegal crossing across the channel, and that needs also to be properly addressed. And this is where the British government is moving into kind of strengthening the ports of entry and to make the rules more strict, somehow to discourage potential future migrants to cross the channels and to seek asylum. Yes, such policy can be understood, but on another hand, it's not the policy that Britain should continue for very long. I hope this is temporary until the balance is brought back into proper consideration of every case. And if there is a genuine asylum case, then the British government should give asylum and encourage people to work rather than to go into the direction of Denmark, I suppose.
And what do you think, to what extent is this hardening of immigration policy? You already mentioned that it is a response to domestic political pressure, such as the rise of the Reform UK party. What do you think this is reflecting of changes in UK?
Yes, it is reflecting a lot of changes in the UK. Reform UK is a kind of a very surprisingly strong now in the opinion polls, and the major kind of concern in Britain is next elections and whether Nick Farage and such extreme right-wing nationalists and populists may come to power. And hopefully not, because Labour and Conservative are the two very long-standing traditional parties in Britain, and they are adopting proper policies and somehow informing the population what they do, reducing the social and economic burdens on the taxpayers in Britain. Yes, there are a lot of options. There is a long list of policies that the British government can undertake in order to limit the influence of the extreme right party, the Reform UK. And we hope to see those happening in the next month.
Yes, indeed. With that, I would like to thank Professor Veselin Popovsky for always joining us and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move on. U.S. President Donald Trump has